I'm Adam Calaway. We're standing at Cattle Chat Corner here at NCBA 2014 in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm joined by Tammi Didlot. You're the past president now of the American National Cattlewomen's. So let's talk a little bit about what that organization does first.
Okay, well, we focus on three primary areas. We focus on legislative issues, the beef promotion, and youth development. Those are our primary focuses, and we just try to keep the positive beef message out there.
Well, let's talk about the beef message that's been out in the last year. We've had a company that's released some advertising that is really portraying agriculture as a factory or a factory farm. Would you go through that process of what is reality versus what is being portrayed to the consumer?
Absolutely. Most people don't realize that most farms' average cattle herd is less than 50 animals. So when you think about these factory farms, it's not reality. I mean, the majority of the producers out there are 50 animals or less. I mean, there are some multi-generation family farms that have more animals, but you got to realize that they're sustaining more than one family. So it may appear like there's a big conglomeration, but it's really 5 generations or multiple families, a brother, a sister, having a family organization.
One of the issues that's raised is animal welfare. Animal welfare is always a priority for our producers. Why is it so important to them to take care of their animals?
Well, without them, they really don't have a product. So it's essential that we take care of our animals. We care about our animals. I mean, a lot of times people don't realize that they're our livelihood. I mean, if they're not healthy and if they're not taken care of, then we're not able to produce a wholesome, nutritious meal. And we serve that same meal to our families. So it is important for them to be taken care of so that they can produce other animals and so that we have a healthy herd and for the safety of the product we're serving.
Animal health is always a part of an animal wellness program. What are the things that you do on your operation to ensure animal health?
Well, I follow the BQA program, which is the Beef Quality Assurance Program, and that we make sure that we vaccinate our animals as far as making sure that they don't have any access to diseases like blackleg and some of the other parasite-type diseases. And we make sure that if they are sick, then we would provide them an antibiotic for that, but only if they need it. I mean, it doesn't make sense to give an animal something that they don't need. And so we take really a lot of precautions in that area.
People are very concerned about antibiotics. They hear that word and they have a reaction to it. What is the reality in use of antibiotics on operations?
It's minimal. I mean, we utilize them when you need them. It's just like when your child is sick. If your child is sick and you take them to the doctor, you would take them and you'd give them an antibiotic to make them combat and have a higher immunity to a sickness or an illness. And that's really the only time we actually provide antibiotics to animals. And the type of antibiotics we use are not the same types of antibiotics given to humans. So there's not an intolerance issue between human antibiotics and animal antibiotics. And the antibiotics are far out of the animal's meat by the time it's actually processed.
So there's not a chance then of it getting passed on to the consumer then?
Exactly. There's no chance of that.
Let's talk about sustainability. McDonald's came out recently and said that they want to use verifiable, sustainable beef starting by 2016. What does that impact? What is sustainability? Let's start there. What's sustainability then to you, and what do you think it means to the consumer?
Well, I think the word sustainable has been thrown around a lot, and there's so many different definitions of it. You know, and in agriculture and the beef community, we are probably the picture of sustainability. We have generations of people producing a product, 5 generations, 4 generations on land. They're producing more product, more beef than they've ever done because they take, environmental issues at heart. They're trying to do the best that they can to make it more efficient. I mean, they gain efficiencies, but it's not at the sake of actually environmental concerns or those types of things. So we are actually the picture of sustainability. But sustainability becomes so much defined by so many different organizations different ways, and they've used it as such a term, that's kind of, and I think it's been convoluted a little bit. But I think what I believe it is the ability to produce more on the same land, taking in consideration that we have natural resources out there that we have to protect, and that we have to make sure that we minimize the exposure to them, and because we have less water than we've ever had before, especially in southwest Oklahoma, and we have to be able to look at the longevity and our ability to continue to produce a safe product.
You talked about longevity, and a lot of that has to do with the economics behind what we do in the agricultural industry. Right now, we're at the smallest cattle herd we've had since 1952. How does that impact the consumer?
It's going to be higher prices at the beef counter. I mean, you know, and because you're going to have less product to sell, and the economics and demand, you know, supply and demand are the core picture of economics. And the problem is right now for a beef producer or a rancher is to actually get another animal to replace a heifer that's out there is much more expensive. And for the economics are, if you can make more money and by putting it into the sale, and you really have limited water or limited grass, then that's what you do. That's why the beef herd is diminished.
What are the factors that are also going in that are contributing to the smaller beef herd?
The ability to have the input costs. I mean, you know, the cost of corn, have the limited amount of grass, the drought. I mean, that's probably the biggest factor for us. We had to reduce our herd size because of drought, and our ponds are drying up. There's so much more cost in fertilizer. I mean, to get grass to grow, you have to fertilize it, and that cost is high. Fuel costs are high. So those are all things that impact that, and it causes people to have to reduce what they have. So,
but a lot of those costs aren't getting passed on to the consumer. Who absorbs that?
The producer. The producer does, and that's why they can't really afford a lot of times to increase their cow size right now.
One of the other questions with economics is how much more expensive is it to produce a calf today than it was, say, 10 years ago for you?
I would say close to a good 25 to 30% in our operation. The cost of the bull, the replacement bulls are much more expensive. The cost of water. I mean, because it's so limited, we can't just drill wells anymore. We actually have to buy county water. So that is a huge input cost for us. And so I would say 20 to 25% more.
Let's talk about technology a little bit. One of the things that we look at with technology is feed efficiency. How important is feed efficiency to the agricultural and the beef sector specifically?
It's real important. As I was just talking about, the cost of feed has gone up, so you have to make sure that you're getting the most bang for your buck and that you're using a good feed that is actually, and using the right technology as far as how much you're feeding at a certain time and using the right facilities to do that. Used to you could just roll out a bale of hay and just, you could afford to just let it lay on the ground. Hay costs are so high, you can't do that. You need to use the right kind of feeders. You need to use the right kind of equipment, and all that plays a key part. And how much feed you're putting out per, your average daily gain, you're measuring that, so you really need to know how much you're putting out there to track the other side of it.
Let's talk about, do you have a smartphone?
I do have a smartphone and an iPad and every other form of technology you could possibly imagine. So.
Do you have livestock apps, agricultural apps that you use on a daily basis?
I do. I use I use a lot of different apps, but I use Cattlemen software. So I track my cow herd by that, and then I utilize a lot of the data that's provided by like CattleFacts and some of the other forms of data that you can actually track, just to make sure you have to kind of put some key input things in and to measure against. So those are things I use.
When you make a decision for your operation, how much does that data weigh into it? Is it still a lot of intuition and experience and a little bit of data, or is it a lot of the data that's driving the decisions now?
I would say it's almost 50-50 because you have to have some intuition. You have to use your gut, and I do business with my father, and he's in his 80s, so a lot of his gut goes into it. But you have to stay in tune with what's happening with technology, with what's better out there as far as product knowledge, and so you have to utilize that, and plus what the data tells you. I'm a business person besides just being a cattle person, so and I think that's one of the most efficient things that you have to do. You have to weigh both, and I'd say 50-50.
Well, listen, the last question that I've been asking everybody is if you could say one thing to the consumers out there about the livestock industry, what would you say to them?
I would say that it's important to be involved and make sure that you stay aware of the issues around you. Everything isn't always what it seems, from the standpoint of, from 30,000 feet, that it may sound like a great idea, but make sure you do your homework. Make sure you stay involved. Make sure you stay in tune with what the organizations are doing, because they're talking on your behalf, and make sure that you're giving them the information that they need to talk on your behalf. And, and just keep producing a good, safe, wholesome, nutritious product.
If you could say something to the consumers out there, the people that are buying the product, what would be that thing that you'd want them to know about our industry?
We care. We care, we're committed, and, we are consumers as well.
Tammi, thank you so much for stopping by Cattle Chat Corner.